Will, it's not just the pandemic, but also the, let's say, the thievery in London, among other cities. I mean, here in Berlin, I've had bikes stolen as well, that encourages people to buy folding bikes. What are your sales looking like right now?
Are off the chart, and we were unable to supply demand. Obviously, we took quite a hit during lockdown, but we're making our bikes by hand in London, and there is a global shortage of bikes, so the supply chain is under pressure. So we're able to make more bikes. We're probably making maybe 20%, 25% more bikes than last year, but the demand is way off from what we can produce at the moment.
That's really interesting. Well, good morning to you. Are you concerned that longer term, if people commute less, if there's less need to go into the office, that perhaps longer term there'll be less need for bicycles, even though you struggle to meet the demand at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a concern that this is a sort of bubble and that there's a big reaction as a result of the coronavirus. But I think it's more than that. We've been on this trend as people are realizing, as we become urban and people are suddenly realizing that they're living in a world of urbanization. It was pretty ropey with poor quality air, huge amounts of stress, vehicles everywhere, paying money to go under the ground into a little metal tube. That's before coronavirus turned up. And we're seeing mayors across the world. We sell our bikes in 47 countries. We export 75%. This is not a London or Berlin issue. It's a global issue. And cities are realizing that they want to make cities nice places to live. They're investing in cycling infrastructure. And not only are they thinking about, the risks of coronavirus, but they're thinking about our mental and physical health. And getting on a bike just makes you feel great.
Are you concerned about Brexit? I mean, how bad is that going to be for sales, or are you going to expand your production facilities and build bikes outside of Britain?
Oh, no. I mean, basically, we moved factory 4 years ago. We've got the capacity to double our output in London, in our factory in London, but we just can't turn it on overnight. So we've got plenty of space in London. And in terms of Brexit, in many respects, Brexit saved us because we've been waiting for Brexit for so long. It's been like it was imminent a year ago, and it was imminent before that. So like 2 years ago, we put £1.5 million into stock, waiting for Brexit. Of course, it sort of kept getting put back. But that saved us because when we came out of coronavirus, we didn't have enough stock. Supply chain was under constraint. So we ate into our Brexit stock. The problem is, we really now do have Brexit coming, and the global pressure on particularly very cycle-specific parts is great. So we do have a challenge coming with Brexit. It may reduce our ability to grow as fast over that period. But in the medium to long term, I think we'll weather the storm. I think Europe is going to find some sort of agreement with a few bits pushed to one side. And I'm hoping we're going to be in the main bit because we're relatively straightforward. And if it comes to worst case scenario, we'll see the pound devalue, which will offset most of the WTO rules. So, on the grand scheme of things, I would think Brexit's going to be fine. And on a macro level for cycling, we've been living in cities in a completely nutty way, and walking and cycling and sort of cities for living in has to be the way to go.
Yes, you mentioned the stock management lessons that many businesses have learned around Brexit, that now around coronavirus coming into their own. Let me ask you, Will, about the way that various cities have responded to coronavirus to give more facilities to cyclists. Yeah. In the UK, there are big plans. There's talk of thousands of miles of protected cycle routes, doctors prescribing cycling, creating 12 mini Hollands. What is your response to the government's plans? Because there's been no shortage of positive words around cycling before.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been on a journey and we've seen this in New York and we've seen it all around the world. There is this shift, but what's happened with the current crisis is that it's accelerated the investment and the commitment from cities around the world. Cycling has been some 2-bit little smudge on a piece of paper when, roads and rail has had huge investment and cycling is some little not that bothered about it sideshow. That is beginning to change. It's the first time in the UK that we've actually been given a per capita investment, which is encouraging, and that's been formally announced. We're seeing things like in Paris, 650 kilometers of segregated cycle lanes, and Anne Hidalgo in Paris has been re-elected. So the citizens of Paris are liking what they're seeing. You know, probably with the exception of New York, where things are still a bit old school, there is a massive wave of investment. And you've got to remember that cycling for the last 40 years has been a recreational tool. It's been road cycling, mountain bike cycling, but this is about urban living and about how you transport yourself. And clearly, you know, if you're going to go and see some friends who live 40 miles away, getting on a bike is a bit optimistic for most of us. But when you're in a city and you're traveling 4, 5, 6 miles, particularly with e-bikes, you know, it's a breeze and you're going way faster than the traffic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had my 70-year-old mother riding to the top of mountains in Berchtesgaden on an e-bike. I think it really changes the equation. And I wonder, you know, how you see electrification changing the equation for cyclists. I mean, they're very expensive now, but do you do a lot of electrification to your bikes, and can you lower that price point?
So we worked for 5 years with Williams, the fast car people, and took technology out of their cars and integrated it into our bike, because particularly for Brompton, it needs to be very, very small and very, very light, because you have to carry it. Because actually you'll find whilst these bikes that exist are expensive, they're also very heavy. And because they're expensive, they get stolen. So having something you can take in with you that doesn't get stolen, particularly if it's an electric bike, is quite attractive. There is no doubt the price will come down, but it's not going to come down to nothing. You know, lithium-ion, the demand for lithium-ion batteries is high. Motor technology has advanced, but you know there are still costs there. And if you want a tool that you use every day, day in, out for 5, 10 years, you should be prepared to invest in getting something half decent.